Okay, Boker Tov. Today's Daf Yomi is Chagigah Daf Chaf Gimel Chagigah 23. In today's Daf Yomi, we're going to start at the bottom of Chaf Beis Amud Beis, where the Gemara is continuing with our discussions of those things in the Mishnah that are stricter by Kachim than by Truma. So 3 lines from the bottom of 22b, the Gemara says, I know say as a midrash, no say as a truma of a as a kodesh. That one who carries the midrash is also carrying the truma, but not the kodesh. So the Gemara says, kodesh my time ago. Why are you not able, if you're carrying something that touched a zav and is an ava tuma, as a primary source of tuma, why can't you carry kachim at the same time? So the Gemara explains, Mishamaisa Shahaya, because there was an incident that happened. What was the incident that happened? Damar Rabbi Yehuda Amar Shmuel, Ma'isa be'echad shahaya mavir chavesh shel yayin kodesh min makom l'makom. There was once a person who was carrying a barrel of kachim wine from one place to another. So he's carrying the kachim wine in a pottery barrel. He's carrying the kachim wine in a pottery barrel from one place to another. And what happened was, v'nifsika mitzvah shel sandalo, or on the top of 23a, and a strap of his shoe broke, vinatla, and he removed the strap from his shoe, or removed the strap from his shoe, and he put the shoe as a result on top of the airspace of the barrel, and it fell into the airspace of the barrel, vinitmes, and it became tameh. So at that moment, Amru, they said, I know say as a midrash. So from there, the rabbis said the point that it's somebody who carries the midrash, somebody who carries something that is an avatama, that then no say as a truma is allowed to carry truma at that time of Loas HaKodesh, but not Kodesh, because that's the scenario in which the kachim became tameh. Gemara says, "Ihachi truma nami." Well, if that's the case, truma also should become tameh. Why do we say that you can't carry kachim, but you can carry truma? What's the difference? If we're worried about the strap or the shoe falling into the airspace, then everything should it should be prohibited to do truma also. Where it says, no, Hamani, this is the position of Rabbi Chananya ben Akavya. This is the position of Rabbi Chananya ben Akavya. We'll see in a moment. Chananya ben Akavya said when the rabbis made a decree to prohibit something because of a specific incident, and the only thing that's prohibited is that specific type of activity, that specific incident, anything that was involved in that specific incident, and anything else is not going to be prohibited. As we learned, Amar, that Rabbi Chananya ben Akavya said, "Lo asru ela b'yardein u'misfina." So Rabbi Chananya ben Akavya said in the Tosefta for on para, he said about the following incident that the rabbis only prohibited exactly what happened in that scenario, which was in the Jordan River and on a ship. Exactly like the incident. Mai, what are we referring to? Tanya, we have a brisa. Brisa also appears in Mesechas Yevamos, but it's a brisa about the red heifer. Well, Yisa Adam Mechatas, the Efer Chatas, and a person is not allowed to carry the water, according to the Tanakam of that brisa. A person is not allowed to carry the Mechatas and the Efer Chatas, the water of the sin offering, and the ashes of the sin offering, v'yavirim b'yardein u'b'sfina, and carry them either in the Jordan River or in a ship. And he's not allowed to stand on one side of a river and throw them to the other side. He's not allowed to cause them to, float them across the water. He's not allowed to ride on an animal with these water of the red heifer or the ashes of the red heifer. And he's not allowed to walk on the back of his friend. Unless his legs were actually touching the ground. But he's allowed to take them over a bridge. He's allowed to take them on a bridge, and he doesn't have to be concerned. So this is the rabbi, whether it's the Jordan or other rivers. So he's allowed to take them on a bridge, but he can't take them across the river or float them across or take them on a ship or throw them from one side to another. And the Gemara is going to tell us that's because of an incident that happened. Comes along And he disagrees. He says, he says, no, the only thing that's prohibited is in the Jordan River and on a ship, and exactly like the incident that happened. What was the exact incident? There was once a person who was mavir mechatos ve'efer chatos in the Jordan, and then on a boat, and he was trying to carry across this water of the red heifer in the Jordan River on a boat. And they found a piece of a dead body on the bottom of the ship, and so therefore everything became tamei. So ba'osa shah amru, so that's why they made a specific decree. Well, yisa adam mechatas ve'efer chatas ve'yaviram b'yardin b'sfina. That moment, they made a decree that you're not allowed to do exactly that. You can't take the water of the red heifer, the ashes of the red heifer, and put it on across the Jordan on a ship. So to in our case, therefore our Mishnah that says you can't carry on across the Jordan, you can't carry the kachim while you're carrying the barrel of while you're carrying the strap, while you're carrying something that's an avatuma, it's because it has to be like the exact incident that happened where the strap of the shoe of the midras went into the airspace of the kachin. So the Gemara says, well, how exact does it need to be? The Gemara asks the question, sandal tamei. Okay, so our case was where this shoe that he was carrying was tamei. What about sandal tahar? What if that sandal was actually pure? Is it still going to be a problem to carry it? Meaning to say, would you have to walk barefoot when you're carrying your kachin? Or alternatively, chaves pesucha, it's only a problem in that case because the barrel was open and it fell in. What about chaves sesuma mahu? What if the barrel there was closed? Would that also be a problem? Because how is it going to be any problem at all if the barrel is closed? And third question is, Avar Vanasa, let's say you went ahead and carried it and nothing happened. Do we still say it's tamei? So about the third case, Rabbi Ilah Amar and Avar Vanasa tamei, Rabbi Zera Amar and Avar Vanasa tahor. So one says it's tamei, the other says it's tahor. So there we have, about the third case, we have a dispute that if you actually carried it and nothing happened, we still say it's tamei. So now we go to the next one. The next case of the Mishnah was Kelam HaNigmarim, that if you have utensils that were completed in a state of ritual purity, by kachim, you still need to immerse it before you use them, but by truma, you don't. So it says the Gemara, the Gamrinu, man, who's the one who actually completed the utensil? If you want to say that a chaver is the one who repeated it, it's somebody who was careful about the laws of kachim. Well, why do you actually need to immerse it? You want to say that an amaretz is the one who completed it. If the amaretz is the one who completed it, so if that's the case, nigmarin why do we say it was completed in a state of ritual purity? The amaretz is never in a state of ritual purity. Who completed it? The chaver is the one who completed it. And so therefore, even though we completed it in a state of purity, why do we say you have to immerse it in the mikvah? Mishum sinura da ama aretz, because we're worried about the spit of an ama aretz, which is going to be considered tamei, and therefore did not. So therefore, the spit of the ama aretz fell on this utensil, and therefore caused a problem. So the Gemara says, "Did not fall amos? When did it fall on it to cause it a problem?" If you want to say it fell on it before the utensil was finished, halav manahu. Well, then it's not a utensil, so it doesn't make it tamei. Now, a basar degamre, if you want to say it fell on it after it finished it, mizar zarbo, the chaver will be careful, and he's not going to be a problem. The Gemara says, it fell on it before it was completed, and but still we have to be concerned. Dilma be'ina degamre adayin lachahi. We want to say that even though it fell on the utensil before it was completed, it didn't make it tamei because it remained on it, but then it was moist on it when it was completed, so now it's tamei. And that's the problem. And the Gemara implies that the Mishnah implies for that the kachim you need to immerse it, but you don't have to wait until sunset of that night in order to use it. That's called erev shemesh. That you can use it right away. So that if there's something that requires immersion, tefillah in erev shemesh. So that if there's something that requires immersion under these circumstances, it only requires immersion, but you don't require the setting of the sun. So I asked the Gemara. Well, the Gemara says, Masnisin the local Rabbi Eliezer. Our Mishnah must not be like Rabbi Eliezer, because what do we learn? We learned in a Mishnah in Para about the following scenario. Shetoferes, let's say you have a reed, shechatcha, a tube that you cut down in order to use for the meichata. So you turn this reed into a utensil. Rabbi Eliezer, Omer, Yitbol miyad. Rabbi Eliezer says, under those circumstances, you immerse it immediately. You will see why. Rabbi Yeshua says, Yitma v'achkak yitbol. Rabbi Yeshua says that first you have to make the utensil tamei and only then immerse it. And the Gemara says, well, let's understand this case. What is going on here? Who is the one who actually cut down this reed? If the chaver is the one who cut it down, the chaver we know is careful. Why does it require immersion? So it must be that the person who's the amaretz is not careful about tumah cut it down, and so therefore, Rabbi Yeshua Tamei v'kai. Why would Rabbi Yeshua say you have to make the utensil tamei before using it? It's already tamei. So why does Rabbi Yeshua say you have to make it tamei before using it? Because the rabbis had a dispute with the Sadducees about whether or not the utensils that were used for the red heifer, if they became tamei, if they required just immersion, which is what the rabbi said, or if they required immersion and sunset. So the rabbis are in the position it requires immersion and Erev Shemesh before you, the Sadducees are in the position it requires immersion and sunset before using it. The rabbis require just immersion. In order to prove that the Sadducees were wrong, the rabbis used to take the utensils, make them tamei, and then immerse in the mikveh and then use it right away. So if Rabbi Yeshua is saying that we need to do this to show that the Sadducees were wrong, but if the Am Haaretz cut it down, why does he need to immerse it? Why does he need to immerse it? It's already tamei. So that's what the Gemara is saying. So it must be that case is on the chaver. It must be that the chaver is the one who cut it down, and so therefore mishum tzinur da Am Haaretz. And we're concerned about the spit of the Am Haaretz. The nafal emas. When did it fall? Even if you want to say it fell before he cut it, well then it's not a utensil. So it must be it fell down after the Am Haaretz cut it. Well, if that's the case, Mr. Zayirba, so that the chaver would have been careful. So so it must be that the spit of the Am Haaretz fell on the tube before he cut it. And we're concerned, we're concerned that the moment he cut it, it was still moist. But anyway, we see from here, Bishlam, the Rabbi Yeshua makes sense according to Rabbi Yeshua that you need to make it tamei and under that circumstances, and then because Hainu the Ika Kero it's a dukin. That's how the Sadducees would know that it's actually tamei, because they wouldn't have known that the spit was on this tube. The Tanamit Tamina Yuako in a Soraf as a par, because they would make the Kohen who was burning the para aduma tamei, and then immerse him, and then let him work with the red heifer, burn the red heifer to show that the Sadducees were wrong. Just to prove that the Sadducees were wrong. So much so was they separated this Kohen for 7 days before and kept him in a complete state of purity to emphasize just how wrong the Sadducees were. They would then intentionally make him tamei. Because they would, to uproot the idea from the Sadducees, Shahayu Omer, the Sadducees said, the Sadducees said that he could only serve after sunset, but the rabbis disagreed. Rabbi Eliezer, but according to Rabbi Eliezer, if you want to say that we always require sunset, if you want to say in general we require sunset, but in this case we're not requiring sunset, well then that's why you don't need to make him tamei, because this is the whole reason why we're not requiring sunset here. But therefore, in general, like we said above, it must be the Rabbi Eliezer always requires sunset. But if we say in general you don't require sunset, and here also we don't require sunset, then how is there ever a hecker for the Sadducees in this case? If you immediately use this tube and you don't need to make it tamei, my hecker with Sadukin. How are you making a hecker for the Sadducees? So it must be that in general Rabbi Eliezer requires sunset, and just in this case he doesn't. So Rav says no, it's not necessarily the case that you're making a care for the Sadducees here. Because what do? Says Rav, Asua, we're on the top of 23b, Asua Katame Sheretz. They made this status of Tumah like the Tame Sheretz. They made this they made this tube that was made for the use of the para, and they made it as though, like somebody that had touched the tamei sheretz. Meaning to say, in general, we don't. Rabbi Eliezer doesn't require tamei sheretz for utensils that are complete in a state of ritual impurity, says Rashi. But here, here there is a hacker. What is it? Because this tube of the chatas, they made it as though it had touched a sheretz, and so therefore they said it's basically a rishon, and therefore were not for the para, it would require erev shemesh. So therefore, asur k'tamei sheretz. So if that's the case, if they made it like as though it's a rishon basically, and whatever touched it would be a sheni el me'ata lo titama adam. Then if that's the case, a person should not become tamei from it. Why? Because as Rashi explains, because the tamei sheretz is not a primary source of tuma. That person is just a rishon, and a rishon can't make a person tamei. Because as Rashi says, shalom atzinu tuma l'adu and kelim anogim b'tamei shekibal tuma me'acherem chutz b'tamei meis. You can only make a person or utensils. You can only make this person tamei if he became tamei from something that touched the dead body. As it says, "Vanefesh anogas titma ada erev." So therefore, this reed, if it was a rishon and tuma, would not have been able to make a person tamei. But why do we learn chodcho matpilah, that one who cuts it, we immerse him. The one who cuts it, the one who cuts this reed down, umatpilah, and the one who immerses it in order to purify it. Tal and Tefillah, they also require immersion. So if that's the case, why? So the Gemara explains, Ela Sua Kitame Meis. So they know they made, the Gemara says, we made this reed as though it was a Tame Meis. And so therefore it was able to make a person into a Rishon Tumah. So therefore, this person who touches this Kohen, who touches this reed, this is the hecker of Rabbi Eliezer. He says that you made this reed as though it touched the dead body, and therefore it's able to make the person a Rishon and Tumah. So the Gemara says, well, if that's the case, you should require immersion. You should require the sprinkle of the ashes on the red heifer on day 3 and day 7. That's what you should require, because he's touched a dead body. So he's touched something that's tamei meis. You should require immersion on day 3 and day 7. You only require immersion, but you don't require the sprinkle of the ashes on day 3 and day 7, which you would require for a red heifer, which we require for a tamei meis. Where it says Ela asua ketame meis b'shvi shelo. Oh, so they made a new kiddush here. They made something new by this tube. They said it's as though you're becoming tamei, but like you touch a dead body, but only after the person who touched a dead body had the ashes and water of the red heifer sprinkled on him on day 3 and day 7. So you no longer need those ashes and water sprinkled upon you. You just need immersion because it's day 7 already. Gemara says, well, that's a big problem to come up with this idea, because we have a different price that states me'olam lo kitshu davar. Bipara, they never ever made any new concepts, new levels of tumah with respect to the red heifer. And here you're saying that with respect to the red heifer, that there was a new concept introduced, that the person come tamei meis as though he had already had the ashes sprinkled upon him. We never had such a thing. So it says Abaye Shol Amru and Rabbi Shol Amru Kordam Mitam. So Abaye says, now, what does this mean? What does this mean when they said they didn't make a new concept of tumah? It means they didn't invent something else. Means to say that they didn't create something that didn't exist in the world before. Like, so for example, says Abaye, Shalom Kordam Etame Moshe, that an axe, which is not something that you typically sit on, can become tamei from a zav. Normally a zav can only make something tamei midras if it's something that you typically sit on. But an axe is not something you sit on. Because Tanya vayoshev al kli, let's say the zav who sits on a kli makes that utensil tamei. Yachol kafa sa v'yashev aleh tarke v'yashev. Let's say you turn over a utensil that you don't typically sit on, like a bowl, that will become tamei. Yeah, tamei. Tamalomer vayoshev al kli asher yashav alav. That the one who sits on the kli asher yeshev alav, that is typically sat on, yitma will become tamei. Misha miyuchad yeshiva, something that is typically sat on can become tamei from from the Zav. It comes to exclude this category, this case of an axe or a bowl, which is not something that sit on. That if you sit on it, you're saying get up, let the axe do its work. And so therefore that's this new category, but now referring to something that's really derivative of the other categories, which is just somebody who's tummy mace on day 7. And so therefore they didn't create something new with respect to the para aduma. So therefore Rabbi Eliezer would have a hecker, Rabbi Eliezer would have a hecker, that indeed there was something new here, there was something different here, that this was a tame mace, and it would have, and so therefore it typically would have been a different category. And so therefore Rabbi Eliezer said you didn't need to make it tame. So therefore, since it was considered to be like a utensil that became tame from a tame mace, and so therefore, typically speaking, it would have required sunset. And so for the fact they used it immediately prior to the sunset, that there was a recognition that it was not like the Sadducees. So the Gemara now says, the next case in the Mishnah was Aklimat Tzarech Mash B'Sofel Kadesh Avalo Truma. That by Kodshim, everything, if one piece was in what became tamei, then everything in a bowl, even if they weren't touching, became tamei. So the Gemara is going to say, what's the source for this? Rabbi Chanin says it's a biblical idea. It says the Torah says everything that was in that spoon is one. So Rav Kahana is going to challenge that because it's going to seem like this is actually not a biblical idea, but a rabbinic idea. We'll pick that up in tomorrow's daf. A big shkoyach to everybody for tuning in. Shkoyach, shkoyach, shkoyach.